Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be tackling the Sacred Month by Dr. Khaled Waleed.
Okay.
And just to give everyone a little bit of a teaser,
Yeah.
Dr. Waleed is putting forth a very interesting reinterpretation of the Islamic calendar. So he's suggesting that the true sacred month is Ramadan,
Okay.
and that it's tied to a fixed Earth-based system, not the lunar calendar that we're all, familiar with.
Right.
So this is going to be really interesting to unpack and to explore.
Yeah, it sounds like it could even reshape how we understand time itself.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I'm ready to dive in.
Me too. So let's jump right into it.
Okay.
One of the things that I found really striking right off the bat was Dr. Waleed's claim that this understanding of the sacred month has been intentionally hidden.
Oh, wow.
And he even goes so far as to suggest a conspiracy involving the children of Israel and their allies among the Arabs.
A conspiracy. Okay.
Yeah. So, I got to admit that definitely piqued my interest.
Yeah, of course. But before we go too far down that rabbit hole, I'm curious.
Yeah.
What's the foundation of his argument? Is he pulling this out of thin air, or is there something more to it?
That's a great question. And he does actually base his argument on specific Quranic verses.
Okay.
He claims they've been either, misinterpreted or deliberately obscured throughout history.
Right.
So he points to Surah At-Tawbah, verse 36.
Okay.
And that verse states that there are 12 months in God's register from the creation of the heavens and the earth, and 4 of these months are sacred.
Okay, so 12 months, 4 sacred. That sounds pretty familiar.
It does, right?
But I'm sensing a twist.
Yeah, there's definitely a twist.
So how does he connect this to a hidden truth?
Well, Dr. Waleed argues that this verse establishes a divine calendar with a fixed number of months.
Okay.
Some of which, hold special significance. But he claims that the true identity and the timing of these sacred months have been intentionally hidden, leading people away from God's intended design.
Okay, so I see where he's going with this, but I think the million-dollar question is why?
Right.
Why would anyone want to hide this information?
Exactly.
What's the motivation?
What's the motivation behind this, supposed conspiracy?
Right.
And that's a question that, to be honest, he doesn't fully address in this document.
Interesting.
He seems to be more focused on the alleged act of concealment itself,
Okay.
rather than, exploring the potential reasons behind it.
So that kind of leaves us with more questions than answers.
It does.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's a very bold claim, so it definitely demands scrutiny.
Yeah.
But I also find it really intriguing that he's using the Quran itself as the basis for his argument.
Right.
It's like he's saying, look, closer, there's more here than meets the eye.
Exactly. He's encouraging a deeper, more symbolic reading of the Quran.
Yeah.
So he analyzes specific words and phrases, kind of searching for these hidden meanings related to the sacred month. For example, he focuses on the fact that the word month appears 12 times in the Quran,
Yeah.
which seems to mirror the 12 months in this divine calendar that he's proposing.
12 times 12 months.
Right.
There's definitely a pattern there.
Here is.
Is he suggesting a direct correlation? Is there some sort of hidden code within the Quran?
He doesn't state that explicitly,
Yeah.
but the implication is certainly there.
Sure.
It's like he's inviting us to consider that there might be more to the text than just a surface level reading reveals.
Right.
There's something deeper there.
Okay, so we've got this alleged conspiracy, this deeper layer of meaning in the Quran.
Right.
What's the next piece of this puzzle?
Well, next he dives into the concept of the haram months.
Okay.
So those sacred months where fighting and hunting are prohibited,
Yeah.
he really emphasizes these prohibitions and connects them to the idea of ihram,
All right.
the state of ritual purity during Hajj.
Right, the haram months, these are specifically mentioned in the Quran.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
He cites Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 95,
Okay.
which outlines the severe consequences for killing game during the haram months.
Right.
And he uses that to highlight their sanctity and the strict adherence that's required during them.
Okay.
And to illustrate his point, he draws a parallel between the restrictions imposed during the haram months and the state of ihram during Hajj.
So the restrictions during these months mirror the state of purity required for Hajj.
Exactly.
It sounds like he's building a connection between the two.
Right.
Does this tie into his overall argument about Ramadan being the sacred month?
Yes. This is where his argument starts to crystallize.
Okay.
He argues that Ramadan, the month of the Quran's revelation, isn't just one of 4 sacred months, but the pinnacle of them all, holding a unique significance.
Yeah, that makes sense because Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 185, clearly states, the month of Ramadan is that in which was revealed the Quran, a guidance for the people.
Exactly.
That's one of the most well-known verses about Ramadan.
Precisely. And he uses this verse to highlight the elevated status of Ramadan. He argues that during this month, the connection with the divine is strongest, and the opportunity for spiritual growth is greatest.
Okay, I'm seeing the pieces come together now.
Yeah.
So the Haram months provide a broader context of sacred time. And Ramadan falling within that period becomes the focal point. The most sacred month of all. This brings up a big question, though. What about the lunar calendar?
Yes, the lunar calendar.
How does Dr. Waleed's fixed Earth-based system work with the Islamic calendar that we're all familiar with?
That's where things get really interesting. He takes a bold stance by completely rejecting the lunar calendar.
Well, hold on. Yeah. Rejecting the entire lunar calendar.
As the basis for determining the timing of Hajj. And the sacred month.
That's a pretty huge statement.
It is.
What's his reasoning behind that?
Well, he uses Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 89. It's the same verse that talks about new moons and their purpose. It says, they ask you, O Muhammad, about the new moons. Say, they are measurements of time for the people and for Hajj. But he interprets this verse differently than the traditional understanding.
How so? It seems pretty straightforward.
Well,
the new moons are for measuring time and determining the Hajj.
He argues that the new moons, or the ahilla, are simply markers for the Hajj, not the foundation of the calendar itself. In his view, the true calendar is fixed, not determined by the lunar cycle.
Interesting. So he's saying the new moons are like signposts along the way? But the actual path is determined by something else entirely.
Exactly.
What exactly does he propose as the basis for this fixed calendar?
He proposes a system based on the Earth's natural rhythms, with 3 seasons of 4 months each: winter, spring, and summer. He claims this system is rooted in a divine order, independent of celestial bodies.
So instead of following the moon, we should be following the seasons.
Yeah.
That's a pretty radical shift in perspective.
It is indeed.
And it raises a lot of questions about how we understand time, nature, and our relationship with the divine.
For sure.
This is also fascinating.
I know, right?
But before we, get lost in the philosophical weeds here, I'm curious, how does this impact the timing of the Hajj?
That's a great question.
Does it mean fixed dates instead of the shifting schedule we're used to?
Exactly. He believes that the Hajj should always occur within the 4 Haram months, which he associates specifically with the spring season. No more shifting dates based on the lunar calendar.
Wow, this is really turning everything we thought we knew about the Islamic calendar on its head.
It is pretty radical.
But before we jump to any conclusions, what else does he say to support this Earth-based system?
Well, he uses a rather intriguing metaphor from Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 189. It's the same verse about the new moons, but this time he focuses on the part about entering houses through their doors.
Entering houses through their doors. Okay, now I'm officially intrigued. How does he tie that into the timing of the months? What's the connection?
Well, he interprets this verse metaphorically. He argues that entering houses through their doors symbolizes following the right path, the divinely ordained path. And for him, adhering to this fixed Earth-based calendar is the right door to understanding the true timing of the months.
So he's saying that using the lunar calendar is like trying to enter a house through a back door or a window. Almost like sneaking in instead of using the proper entrance.
Exactly. He seems to be suggesting that relying on the lunar calendar is a deviation from the intended path, a way of sidestepping the true order established by God.
That's a really powerful image.
It is.
It really highlights the stark contrast between the two approaches. But I have to admit, this whole idea of a fixed Earth-based calendar is a lot to process.
It is.
It challenges centuries of tradition and practice. What would you say to someone who's maybe struggling to wrap their head around this concept?
Well, I understand the hesitation. It is a challenging concept to grasp. Especially given the long-standing tradition of the lunar calendar in Islam. But if we try to look at it from Dr. Waleed's perspective, he's suggesting that the Earth itself, with its seasons and cycles, is a manifestation of divine order.
So he's not saying that the lunar calendar is inherently wrong, but rather that it's incomplete, that it doesn't fully capture the deeper connection between time, nature, and the divine.
That's a very nuanced interpretation, and I think it does align with his argument. He doesn't explicitly condemn the lunar calendar, but he suggests that it might have led to a disconnect from the natural world and the divine rhythms embedded within it.
That resonates with me. It's like by focusing solely on the lunar cycle, we've lost sight of the bigger picture.
Right.
The interconnectedness of all things.
Exactly.
And by realigning ourselves with the Earth's seasons, perhaps we can rediscover a deeper sense of harmony and understanding.
Exactly. He advocates for a more integrated worldview, recognizing that profound connection between the spiritual and the natural.
This all sounds very, profound and thought-provoking.
It is.
But I'm also wondering about the practical side of things.
Okay.
If we were to adopt this Earth-based system, how would it work in practice?
Right.
Would we completely abandon the lunar calendar? What about all the existing holidays and observances tied to the lunar cycle?
Those are valid questions.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he doesn't fully address them in his work. He presents the Earth-based calendar as an ideal, a way to restore this lost understanding of time and the sacred.
Okay.
But the practicalities of implementation are left open for further exploration.
So it's more of a philosophical framework than a concrete plan.
Right.
A call to re-examine our assumptions and consider alternative perspectives.
Exactly.
Right.
His work is meant to provoke thought,
right,
inspire a deeper exploration of the Quran and its teachings. It's an invitation to engage in a process of rediscovery and reinterpretation.
It is a journey, not a destination.
Right.
And speaking of journeys,
yes,
I recall Dr. Waleed makes a very specific connection between the sacred month and the Hajj.
He does.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Certainly. So, as we touched on earlier, he argues that the Hajj should always take place within the 4 haram months, which he firmly associates with the spring season.
Right.
But then he makes this fascinating leap, stating that Ramadan, the month of the Quran's revelation, is the pinnacle of the haram months. And this leads him to conclude that performing Hajj during Ramadan is the greater Hajj, a pilgrimage of heightened significance.
But he's suggesting that by combining the 2 most important pillars of Islam, fasting during Ramadan and performing the Hajj, we can achieve this like supercharged spiritual experience.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
He seems to believe that performing the Hajj during Ramadan allows for a deeper level of spiritual immersion and connection with the divine.
I can almost picture it, millions of Muslims converging on Mecca during Ramadan.
Right.
Fasting together, praying together, performing the rituals of Hajj together.
Yeah.
It'd be an incredible demonstration of unity and devotion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it highlights his emphasis on the collective experience of faith.
Okay.
He seems be saying that these shared rituals performed in alignment with the Earth's natural cycles have the power to unite and uplift humanity as a whole.
It's a beautiful vision.
It is.
That resonates with that human desire for meaning and connection.
Yeah.
But I have to ask, wouldn't this raise some logistical challenges? Could Mecca realistically accommodate such a massive influx of pilgrims during Ramadan?
Right.
And what about the physical challenges of performing the Hajj while fasting?
Those are certainly practical concerns that would require careful consideration and planning.
Right.
However, I think his focus is more on the spiritual potential of aligning these 2 pillars of Islam. The logistics, while important, are secondary to the profound symbolism of the act itself.
So it's about recognizing the symbolic power of this combined act, even if the practical implementation might be complex.
Exactly. He challenges us to imagine a different way of approaching the Hajj, one deeply connected to the rhythms of both the earth and the divine.
It's definitely food for thought.
It is.
And I think that's what makes Dr. Waleed's work so compelling.
Right.
It's not about providing easy answers or dictating a rigid set of beliefs. It's about sparking a conversation, prompting us to question our assumptions, and encouraging a more dynamic and thoughtful engagement with the Quran and our faith.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
It's an invitation to explore,
Right.
to question, and to deepen our understanding of the mysteries of faith and the natural world.
It's a journey that requires both intellect and intuition.
Yeah.
A willingness to embrace both the familiar and the unknown.
I like that.
And now let's turn our attention to one of the most fascinating and perhaps controversial aspects of Dr. Waleed's argument.
Okay.
His reinterpretation of Ramadan and the significance of Laylat al-Qadr.
Ah, yes. This is where he really challenges traditional understandings.
Okay.
He goes beyond simply stating the importance of Ramadan and makes a very bold claim.
Okay.
Every night of Ramadan holds the spiritual significance of Laylat al-Qadr.
Wait every night.
Yeah.
But traditionally, Laylat al-Qadr is understood as a single night within Ramadan.
Right.
A night of immense spiritual significance. Isn't he deviating quite drastically from the conventional interpretation here?
He is indeed.
Well.
While traditionally Muslims believe Laylat al-Qadr falls on one specific night during Ramadan,
Right.
a night of immense spiritual significance.
Yeah.
Dr. Waleed argues that this special quality permeates the entire month.
So instead of seeking that one special night,
Yeah.
he's suggesting we view the whole month as a period of heightened spiritual sensitivity.
Exactly.
It certainly shifts the focus.
He does.
It makes you think about the possibilities for growth and connection throughout Ramadan.
For sure.
So it's less about pinpointing the exact moment of Laylat al-Qadr.
Right.
And more about cultivating a state of spiritual awareness that lasts the entire month. It's like he's saying the potential for a profound connection with the divine is present every night of Ramadan if we're open to it.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
It's a shift from seeking a specific event to embracing a sustained state of being.
Right.
And this ties back to his overall argument about the Earth-based calendar.
Yeah.
Just as the seasons gradually unfold over time,
Right.
he suggests spiritual growth is a process
Yeah.
requiring ongoing dedication and cultivation.
I love that connection.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing the natural rhythms of both the physical world and the spiritual realm.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And perhaps he is inviting us to consider that by aligning ourselves with these natural rhythms, by tuning into the cycles of the earth and the seasons,
Right.
we might unlock a deeper understanding of our own spiritual journey.
This is incredibly thought-provoking.
It is.
But before we delve further into those philosophical implications,
Okay.
I want to address something that's been on my mind throughout our discussion. Dr. Waleed's ideas are undeniably fascinating.
Yeah,
But they also challenge many deeply held beliefs and traditions.
they do.
How do you think his work might be received by the wider Muslim community?
That's a complex question, and I imagine the reactions will be diverse.
Right.
Some may find his ideas liberating, a fresh perspective that invigorates their faith.
Yeah.
Others may view them with skepticism or even outright rejection,
Right.
seeing them as a threat to established doctrines.
I think it's important to acknowledge that diversity of thought within the Muslim community.
Absolutely.
There's no single monolithic perspective.
Right.
And Dr. Waleed's work is sure to spark debate and discussion.
It will.
It wouldn't be a true deep dive if it didn't challenge us, right?
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of engaging with thought-provoking ideas like these. They encourage us to think critically,
Yeah.
question our assumptions,
Right.
and deepen our understanding of our own beliefs.
It's about embarking on a journey of intellectual and spiritual exploration,
Yes.
being open to new perspectives while respecting the rich tapestry of interpretations within our faith.
Exactly.
And welcome back to our deep dive into the sacred month by Dr. Khaled Waleed.
Yes, welcome back.
We've been exploring, some really thought-provoking and sometimes controversial ideas about the Islamic calendar, the concept of sacred time, and the significance of Ramadan.
It's been quite a journey so far.
It has.
His work has definitely challenged us to look at familiar concepts in a new light,
Right.
to question our assumptions, and to delve deeper into the Quran and its interpretations.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I've really been struck by is the emphasis on personal interpretation and engagement with the Quran.
Right.
He's not presenting like a rigid dogma or a set of rules to be blindly followed.
No, not at all.
Instead, he's inviting us to wrestle with these ideas, to ponder them, and ultimately arrive at our own understanding.
Exactly. He encourages us to be active participants in our faith journey, not passive recipients of information.
It's about engaging with the text.
Yes.
Seeking out those hidden meanings,
Right.
making connections that resonate with our own lived experiences.
I think that's key.
It's almost like he's saying, don't just take my word for it.
Right.
Go explore the Quran for yourself.
Exactly.
Question, analyze, and come to your own conclusions.
How's that?
And speaking of critical thinking, there's one more point I want to touch on before we wrap up.
Okay.
Dr. Waleed uses this really intriguing metaphor about entering houses through their doors to illustrate his point about understanding the true timing of the months.
Right.
Can you unpack that a bit further for us?
Certainly. So as we discussed earlier, he interprets this verse from Surah Al-Baqarah metaphorically.
Right.
He believes that entering houses through their doors represents following the right path, the path ordained by God.
And in his view, this path involves aligning ourselves with the Earth's natural rhythms and cycles.
So if following the Earth-based calendar is like entering a house through the front door openly and honestly, then relying on the lunar calendar is like trying to sneak in through a back window.
That's a great analogy.
Right.
He suggests that the Earth-based calendar, with its fixed connection to the seasons, represents a more direct and authentic way of accessing the divine order.
It's a really fascinating concept.
It is.
It's almost like he's saying that the earth itself is a sacred text, a revelation of God's will that's constantly unfolding around us.
That's a beautiful and profound insight.
And that ties in so beautifully with the broader Islamic understanding of the earth as a source of blessing and guidance.
Indeed, and I think it really speaks to the heart of Dr. Waleed's message. That we are part of this larger interconnected web. And our understanding of the sacred should reflect that interconnectedness. So as we conclude our deep dive into Dr. Waleed's unique perspective, what final thoughts would you like to leave our listeners with?
I think it's crucial to remember that Dr. Waleed's work, while thought-provoking and insightful, is ultimately one interpretation among many.
Right.
It's up to each individual to engage with his ideas critically, to study the Quran for themselves, and to arrive at their own understanding of the sacred month and its significance.
Beautifully said. It's about embarking on that personal journey of discovery. Guided by intellect and intuition, respect for tradition, and an openness to new perspectives.
And who knows what wonders await us on that path of exploration and understanding.
That is the perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Dr. Khaled Waleed's work.
You're welcome.
The Sacred Month. It's been a really fascinating and challenging perspective.
It has.
And may your own journey of faith be filled with wonder and enlightenment.